Do you want to know the secret for a happy life? No, it's not money. No, it's not having a car, a house, a family, or whatsoever. No, it's not all of that. It is very simple. Simple as BFL, not best friend for life. BFL stands for breathe, feel, and live. But before telling you how, let's see why we are unhappy. And usually we are unhappy because of our nervous system, which is not equilibrated, and it comes from usually abuse. It can be physical, sexual, financial, spiritual abuse, whatever. And usually it happens during childhood when our nervous system is actually developed, and it's developed against a threat, which means that it becomes very irritated, very easily irritated, very easily in threat, which we respond with fear, which prevent us from doing anything, and which lead us to a sense of not being satisfied with what we did. Eventually, it leads to unhappiness. I have been unhappy most of my life. Not anymore. I am happy with my life because I've done the work. I have been abused physically, sexually as well. But now I have been able to transcend these abuses from my childhood. When we have been abused, there is many impacts that happen in our life. Let's start with that. First, the impacts, the psychological impacts. It leads to fear, it leads to threat, it leads to behaviors of not being able to do anything, being afraid of not please everybody, being afraid of failure, all of that. And it leads eventually to not being able to have a fulfilling life, a thriving life. Because we have to please everyone. We have to sacrifice our own happiness for the happiness of others. We have to be normal. We have to conform to what society is actually asking of us. But is it who we truly are? No, we're not. It's not that. These are the first impacts of being abused. The other impact, as I mentioned earlier, it comes from physiologically. Our nervous system, really the nerves, how they are connected between each other, and the brain and all the areas in the brain, especially in the limbic system, where all the emotions are actually manifested and being conscious afterwards. So what it does, it creates some kind of short circuit so that it prevents us of being abused again. It creates this system of threat, this system of fear of anything that could be eventually dangerous for us. But it's not the case. But we don't know how we can reprogram that because we're not programmed for that. We are not living anymore in an area where mammoths or saber-tooth are actually running after us. Not anymore. These threats are real because our nervous system has been unbalanced because we have been abused during childhood, during our own development. And it has to stop. How? Let me tell you why. Let me tell you how. The other impacts also of being abused goes into the emotional state. We're not able to self-regulate. We're constantly in a whirlpool of emotion, not even able to manage them because they are so present all the time. We become hyper vigilant to everything. Everything becomes a threat. And we don't know why, because we're not even aware of that. Because this is our life. when we have been abused, this is how we react. This is physiology that happens. And how we, when all of that happens, all this impacts in our life, in our body, we become irritable. We become, we don't bear anything. Everything becomes a threat, as I said before. Nothing tastes anymore. Life doesn't have a sense, a purpose anymore. Everything becomes a blur, and eventually nothing can fulfill us. Nothing can make life worth living. And eventually it can even lead to depression, burnout, and even dark thoughts. And all of that happened to me. All of that. And to the point where I reached burnout. It came with the confinement. Actually, the confinement saved my life. Definitely. Because I was able to stop completely. I didn't have any other choice to look at what was my life. What was my life after 45 years? What was the point of living like that all over again? Without having a sense of happiness, simple happiness. But then I realized what was missing. And what was missing was living. What's life? Life comes with feeling. Feeling. Anything that happens. Everything becomes alive. This is life. Joy. Sadness. Even anger. But joy can be lived again. Can be felt again. But what can we do when we have a nervous system, an emotional system, psychology, but it's actually tasteless, feelingless? We have to rehabilitate the nervous system, which is actually the link between our consciousness and our awareness. Awareness comes in the brain, consciousness is within the heart, is our own sensorium. We have to rehabilitate our nervous system that has been unbalanced and programmed a certain way for us to react to any stimulus. But how can we sense that without producing a feeling of threat? There is one thing that we can do to come back to the basis of life. What's life? Every living being breathes. Every single living being is breathing to come back to the breath. And I realize in my life, when I come back to that dark state I was in, I was not breathing. I was not breathing to the way I was able to feel and to live. I was not breathing at all. Shallow, high breath, name it. I had to learn again how to breathe. I had to make several biomechanical, biochemical exercises to rehabilitate my nervous system through my breath. Meaning I was able to deliver information to my nervous system in a way that was not a threat because it was breathing. And I was able to reprogram my nervous system so that any stimulus was not a threat. I was not attacked by anything at all. I was breathing. That was the first step. Rehabilitate my nervous system to not be in a state of threat. First step. Second step, because this is only the first step. Second step was to work on myself, to go to these dark places where I was traumatized, I was abused, and to free myself from these traumatic imprints. How? Well, there's many modalities to do that. And I continue with the same idea, the breath. Using breath work, special techniques that can bring my consciousness, my awareness to an altered state, allowing me to go back to the old subconscious that was actually leading everything in my life, that was putting these signs of threat, of fears, or whatever. I was able to go back there and go back to this traumatic imprints and transform them. So that I was releasing my nervous system from this short circuit that was not serving me anymore. It takes a lot of work. Yeah, everything does. If we want to be successful in our lives, if we want to be happy, it comes with work. Not a price, it comes with work. But is it worth it? Yes, it is. Is happiness worth it? Yes, it is. Is freedom worth it? Yes, it is. I regret nothing that I have been able to do thanks to breath work, thanks to my breath. Now every single thing comes around better breathing. This is the basics. We can do mental work. Psychotherapy is very interesting, but for me, it's only partial because we're only looking at one part of our system, which is the mind. But the true freedom only happens when all of this is actually integrating into the body. But the best way to integrate it into the body and link it to the mind is with the breath. So when I say the true secret to a happy life, a thriving, fulfilling life, is actually breathing. It's actually BFL. Breathe first, feel second, and then live. Because you have done the work. I have done it. All my clients have done it. And now they can start thriving into the life. It's so worth it. You are worth it. Remember, breathe, feel, live. I hope.